A question I've seen tossed around a lot lately, and one that I've been pondering myself, is should you start over when the full release of Grounded occurs in September? In this video, I'll discuss the pros and cons of starting over and continue your existing saves, and let you know what I plan on doing. Before we begin, I want to thank Handsome Ivan, Lyndon Dade, Mateo Solis, Matthew Campbell, Stephen Van, the Overseer 91, and all my other channel members and patrons. You can support the channel today by becoming a member or patron via the links in the description. Thanks again to all my channel members and patrons. Let's get started. So what I want to start off by doing is looking at the pros and cons of starting over. After we get through that, we will move on to the pros and cons of continuing your existing saves, and then I'll let you know what I plan on doing. So the biggest pro for starting over when the 1.0 update comes out is you'll be able to experience the game from start to finish. Of course, at this point, we've probably completed 3/4 of the game or so. There's lots of audio files that aren't in the game currently that will probably be added. I can't imagine they're all going to be added to the newer parts of the map. So more likely than not, they'll be scattered throughout the yard. You'll be able to progress through the game. Perhaps you can try out different weapons as you're starting over. You'll be able to feel the overall progression, the new, like the upgrade systems and stuff like that, which were probably not in place the first time you play through the game. And even if you had to go back and get all the chips in the Bug Strike Back update, I believe it was, you probably did that with all your high level gear. So it was super trivial to do that. So starting over with 1.0 would basically let you start from the beginning to the end, experience the full experience that the developers want you to experience. Second's going to be you'll have more to do when full release happens. If you start fresh, you're obviously going to take much longer to get to the end of the game than if you continue your existing save. So if you're the kind of person that's just looking to get the most time out of Grounded after 1.0 and beyond, then you're going to want to start over because you'll be able to spend more time with it. It'll last you a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, depending how often you can play it. Third pro is going to be you can try new building spots and gear. More likely than not, you've probably built bases in your existing saves. Even if you played multiple times, there's a good chance you probably built in roughly the same locations. Now that you've played through the game and experienced most of the map, if you start over, you could possibly build in different spots. Maybe you found the better spot. Maybe you found somewhere after a couple trial and error, you can build there. You can also try out different gears. More likely than not, if you've been playing since like when the game first released 2 years ago, or even if you started playing about a year ago and already had all the stuff unlocked before it was changed, like the Mint Mace and stuff like that, there's a good chance you probably blew through the early game with overpowered weapons and armor. If you start over, you'll have to basically you maybe can choose different weapons. You're going to definitely experience. It's probably going to be a little bit tougher because the early game, in my opinion, now is a little bit tougher than it was before. So it'll give you a bigger challenge. And then last but not least is you can choose a different way of progressing through the game. This would include the gear that you choose, where you build and stuff like that, but it also the order you do the labs in. For me personally, up until the last update, when we had to go back and get the chips, I always did the Koi Pond after repairing the Mysterious Machine in Burgle. Then I would do the Hedge, then the Haze, and then all the newer stuff that was added after that. In the latest update, obviously, they told us, the Burgle tells us to go to the Hedge first. So that's where I went first. Then I went to the Koi Pond, and then the Haze, and so on and so forth. Now that I know where everything is, I could just decide, even though maybe it's going to be tougher, maybe I want to go to the Haze first, maybe I want to go to the Black Anthill first, maybe I want to go to the picnic table and get stuff like that. Or you can just go to the upper yard, and if you know where the enemies are and you can just kind of avoid them, you can just get decent gear and stuff like that. So it basically gives you the option to just play through the game in a completely different way than you did before. If you've been playing it since day one, more likely than not, you've been experiencing it in chunks. So they updated the Koi Pond, you did that. They updated the Hedge, you did that. They updated the Haze, you did that. That's kind of how I was when I started playing again a little over a year ago. Is I started playing right before they updated the Haze lab, right before the Shroom and Doom update. That's when I'd already done everything up to that point. And I even did, actually, I think part of the Haze Lab was available then. Maybe it was a little bit later. But basically, I'd already done all that. And then when they added the stuff after that, I just continued on. So it was kind of like a natural progression. Now that I know where everything is, I could do it in a completely different order if I want to. So those are the pros that I thought of. If you can think of any others, let me know in the comments down below. Now let's get to a couple of cons. If you're starting over, the biggest con, and the one that I think is on most people's mind, and I've seen a lot of questions about this, of will you be able to continue your existing saves? And that's if you start over, you will have to give up all the work you've put into your existing saves. I know me personally, I put hundreds of hours into a couple of different saves, both my solo and the cult that I have with my kids. And I know lots of people have spent hundreds of hours building massive builds, castles, little towns and stuff like that, grinded all these resources and stuff like that. So if you decide to start over, you're gonna have to give up all that work. And hopefully, like I said, I really hope that they do. As they've said, they're going to let us continue existing saves for those people that want to, because I know that even if you do want to start over, you could do both. That people that have all these existing builds and stuff like that want to keep them because they put so much time and work into them. And then the second con of starting over would be you're gonna have to repeat the same content again. Now, for me personally, I think I've gone through the game from start to finish at least 3 or 4 times at this point. I have my solo world. I just did a co-op run on stream with Original Ryan from start to finish through everything in the game. I had a co-op run with my kids. I think I started I did a WoW mode playthrough where I got at least halfway through the game, if not more. So I've played through most of the game 3 or 4 times at this point, and I'm sure some of you have done it even more. And then, of course, with the Bug Strike back update where we had to go back and get the chips, even though it was trivial because I had high-level gear, I did have to go back and do all the labs over again, basically the exact same experience. So 4 or 5 times I've done everything from the early to mid-game. So that will be a con of starting over, is having to do that whole thing over again. I don't expect right now for the early to mid-game stuff to change very much. The only thing I could see them adding is perhaps sprinkling in some audio logs or notes in the existing labs that we've already played through. And for that reason, I kind of almost feel like we're gonna have to get the chips again at 1.0, even if you do decide to continue your existing saves. But for those of you that just don't want to have to slog through the same thing, doing the same content, and that's just one of the cons of starting over. So those are the pros and cons I came up with for starting over. Like I said, if you have any pros or cons, let me know in the comments down below so I can read through them to see what you guys think. Let's now move on to the pros and cons of continuing your existing saves. So the first pro I came up with for continuing your existing saves is you'll be able to experience the ending of the story much faster. Of course, for some of you that may be a con, but for those of you that want to continue your existing saves, if maybe you've played the game, you put tons of time in it, and you're just waiting to get to the finish line, and you're looking to move on to something else, if you continue your existing saves, you'll be able to experience the ending of the story much sooner than if you start over fresh. Next up is going to be you'll be able to keep all your existing builds and resources. Of course, we've already talked about this. I know lots of you have put time in. I've seen so many pictures of these cool bases. People have done videos on them. They've shared them on Discords. They've shared them on Reddit. There's just so many cool builds that people have built. And if you continue your existing saves, you'll obviously be able to keep all of those and be able to continue with the rest of the story and still have those around and not have to build them from scratch again. Another pro is going to be you want to spend days grinding resources. We all know with the changes to the armor and weapons, the upgrade systems, that grinding quartzite and grinding the grub leather, the sap, the crude rope, all the things that come along with the berry leather, stuff like that, all those things that are going to involve you upgrading weapons and armor, that's going to take hours and hours and hours. It's going to take days in real life to do that because so much is needed to progress through the game. Even if you kind of like streamline it and only pick a couple of things to upgrade. As an example, the other day on one of my streams, I upgraded a single weapon from level 7 to 9, and I upgraded one armor from level 0 to level 9, and I had most of the resources already and didn't have to go get too many of them. And just processing those resources, turning the grub plates or the grub leather into grub scraps, turning that into grub plates, then making the berry scraps and making berry plates, then making the pupa scraps and making pupa plates, and then finding out that I didn't have enough resources to make all of them, having to go get some of those, not having enough quartzite to make the quartzite globs I wanted to upgrade myself. It took 2 hours or so just to do that, and that's with me having most of the resources there and also having tons of spinning wheels, grinders, ovens, and stuff like that so that I could quickly process all those things. So, of course, if you continue your existing save, you won't have to do that. You more likely than not have been stocking up on resources. Like me, I have a chest full of plates for pretty much upgrading multiple pieces of armor that come out, and also tons of quartzite, salt, mint, and spicy shards for upgrading any weapons that come out as well. And then the final pro is going to be you won't have to repeat the early mid-game content. I do think they're probably going to make us go back and get the chips again. I can't imagine they're not going to do that, but maybe they won't. Maybe I'm going to be wrong. But even if they do, you won't have to go back and actually repeat all that content over again from scratch without any gear. If they do make us do what they did in the Bug Strike back update where we have to go back and just get the chips again, you can just go in with your level 9 weapons, level 9 armor, and blow through it pretty quickly. It might just take you a couple hours, but it's better than having to, if that's the way you feel, it's better than having to start from scratch with no gear, level 0 everything, and having to grind your way through it. Now moving on to the cons of continuing your existing save. The biggest one's going to be you'll be finished the game much faster. Now, this kind of depends on where you sit on the fence. Obviously, if you're looking to move on and you're just kind of like, maybe you've burned out on the game, you just want to finish it, then that wouldn't be a con. But for those of you that love the game, and I know many of you love the game, I've seen lots of people hoping that there's stuff added after 1.0 because they kind of just don't want to see the boat. They want to see the ship keep moving on and not just docking and just ending. that if you continue your existing saves, you'll be finished the game much faster. So there's nothing you can really do about that. I guess you could drag your feet a little bit, but you're going to have everything done up until that point, and just having to complete whatever's left, or even maybe having to go back and get some stuff from the older areas, it's going to take you far less time than if you start from scratch and have to grind through everything again. And then the second kind I came up with was you won't experience the whole story from start to finish. This is kind of the one that's pushing me towards at least starting over from scratch at least one time, because having played the game for 700 plus hours over the course of, I think, like the last 14 months or so, and just basically playing it chunk at a time, and then also playing other games recently from start to finish, playing a game in chunks is just a totally different experience than playing it from start to finish. So if you just basically continue your existing save and then drop the game and never play it, you'll never have experienced the game from the beginning to the end. And I think that's a huge con, because the devs have put so much work into the game. They've done an incredible job. Even though I've disagreed with some of the decisions they've made a great game. It's a fun game. Obviously I put hundreds and hundreds of hours in it. It's probably my top 5, at the very worst, top 10 all time in terms of like hours put into a game. It's probably in my top 5. And that's basically not playing through the whole story at least one time. I can't imagine myself doing that. So that kind of moves us on to the final part, and that's what I plan on doing. So assuming that we are able to continue our existing saves, I'm 100% going to continue the save that I have, the main solo save that I have, because I already have tons of stuff stocked up. I'll be able to get through that last chunk of the game and be able to make any kind of videos I think are worthwhile to make the game helpful for people. Maybe things you'll get stuck on, maybe like how to beat the Manus boss, how to beat whatever that other boss was, boss locations, all the new Milkmore locations, stuff like that. Maybe there's new mutations, how to do the new mixers, things along those lines. I'm going to continue my existing save just because I want to get to the end. And at this point right now, I'm probably going to start over fresh. I know I've been kind of like holding off on playing the game through with my kids, continue our existing save. More likely than not, what I'm probably going to do is just wait until September and say, if they want to play it, then let's just start over from scratch, play through the whole game. It'll give us something to do probably for a couple months, because I won't be playing it hardcore. We'll just play it for a couple hours at a time, couple hours a week, and just take a couple months to beat the whole game, unlock everything, and they'll be able to see everything through, because they honestly haven't really played much. They've only played a couple of times in the last probably like 6 or so months. After that initial push of playing with them, right after the Shroom and Doom update, I think it was, is when they kind of got like bored of it and stopped playing it, and we've really only played it a couple times since then. And then of course there's some friends that I said I was going to probably play co-op with. So that's where I'm leaning right now, is I'm definitely going to continue my existing save. That's my main focus. If my kids want to play, I'm going to start fresh with them. And then beyond that, I think there's a good chance I'm going to start fresh just to play through the game co-op with some friends. I don't know if I want to do a solo playthrough. I mean, I might do it. Personally, I'm not looking to just extend the life of this game beyond further than it needs to be. We don't really know what's going to happen in 1.0. My complete mindset could change one way or the other depending on what actually is released in September. There's a public test server that's going to be coming up most likely at the end of this month. That seems like the most likely time. If not then sometime in early August. I don't expect any new content in that. That's probably just going to be some kind of new system. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm crossing my fingers right now. You can't see that, but I'm crossing my fingers right now that whatever new system they want us to test out is not something that adds extra grind to the game, that it's something like a weather system, or maybe they're changing the way raids work or something like that, or something along those lines, so it's not just adding extra grind to the game. That would be super cool. But I have no idea. We have no idea how much is going to be added when the 1.0 release actually occurs in September. So, of course, my thoughts could change. Let me know what you're thinking right now. Are you planning on starting fresh? Are you planning to continue your existing saves? Let me know if you're thinking of, like, if you can continue your existing saves, or are you going to do both? Maybe you're going to do both. I'll probably end up doing a poll sometime this week just to see where people are after I put this video up. And I'm going to discuss it on my live stream the day that this video is coming out. So if you're watching the day it comes out, hop on over to my live stream later on that evening, and we'll be discussing all this stuff that was mentioned, all the things that we think are going to be coming in the the PTS and then 1.0. And I'm just going to be grinding some more resources, because like I said, I'm just preparing right now so that I can just jump right in and do all the new stuff. And then more likely than not, unless there's something changes that changes my mind, I will end up just starting fresh at least one time. But like I said, things could change. I think personally right now that the game is I don't expect many updates after 1.0. My current feeling is There's going to be probably 1 or 2 updates after 1.0 that add some bug fixes, add some cosmetic stuff like the stuff bugs that are currently missing from the game, the wall mount, the head wall mounts or whatever from the rest of the bugs. They might add some cosmetic stuff like maybe different accessories for the characters. Maybe we can paint walls. Maybe they add some new building pieces, things along those lines. I don't expect there to be major content after it. I mean, I hope I'm wrong because it is a fun game and I've enjoyed my time with it. But if they don't, that's fine. We can wrap up the story and move on to something else. So anyway, those are my thoughts. If you made it this far, make sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing for more videos just like this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.